people would stick around if we weren't showing
Oh
up.
yeah,
I
here
don't
we go.
know.
I had to hit a
Oh, we're
second button.
Anyone?
live.
Proof of life? Anyone? Can we?
We're live.
Are
Welcome
we?
to JetsCentric Playoff Edition, our first ever post game wrap up. And if you can't tell, I'm in a great mood. I feel like I just won the lottery.
Uh,
I don't blame you. I'm feeling, like I said, I came into this game with lower expectations and they completely
live.
blew them away results wise
Proof of
by
life.
final score. So I'm feeling fantastic.
Let's welcome in everyone. Hi, I'm Kishore. I'm joined by our usual host, Liz, and Justin and Daniel. First of all, let's talk about reactions. Is this what you expected tonight? Liz, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, so okay, here's the deal. Like it was a very low event game in my opinion. I didn't think it was overly exciting on either end of the ice. I thought that both teams' defensemen did a decent job of playing pretty simple hockey and just sort of keeping those high scoring chances down. I'm just impressed at how well I don't even say want to say how well because I didn't notice it very much, but they were matched together. So the Shifley line must have done a pretty good job of keeping that McDavid line down because the guy finished the game with two shots, didn't have a shot in the first, I want to say like 40, 50 minutes of the game. Keeping him off the score sheet on its own is terrific. But this was huge. Yeah, so I'm wearing my Dubois jersey, Justin's wearing his Ehlers jersey, and all these two guys have the same amount of points in this series as Connor McDavid does. So we were joking about that earlier. But my relative to expectations, I'm impressed with the way that the game went. But again, I have through the roof, like above Colorado Avalanche expectations from this team when I watch them. They have to do everything right for me to be impressed. So I still clearly have a lot of issues to pick with them, but results wise, pretty good. I'm feeling great right now. Still not shaken up but it's playoff hockey and I get a little bit involved and into it and stuff. So I'm kind of coming down from a bit of an excitement. I've never cheered so hard for an empty net goal before. So anyways, that's where I'm at right now. I'll
And a
throw it to
Connor
Justin.
Shifley Wheeler empty net goal at that.
I
Twice,
actually,
two of
I
them.
actually stood up for that. Connor got the first one. I actually usually emptied that. I'm like, oh, whatever. But I knew that was like the clincher, right? So
Oh yeah,
Justin, what did you think
absolutely.
of the game?
Well, I certainly coming in didn't expect the Jets to really. I mean, they kept McDavid off the score sheet, which was a big positive. And at 5-on-5, it was 1 goal for, 1 against. So they like had a saw off there. It was even. That's something I did not expect that they would do on the road. They don't have last change. They're not able to pick their matchup, right? And so I guess the team really kind of clutched up and came together with a solid defensive effort. I mean, that kind of reminded me of like the way that the New York Islanders like to play, right? Like just defense first, grind it out, don't take too many risks, and just get kind of crappy goals, chip it in, grindy goals. And, I mean, from some names that you wouldn't expect, certainly with Toninato and Poolman there. So, yeah, they definitely, I didn't think they had it in them without Ehlers and Dubois on the road against McDavid. I mean, it looked like the odds were stacked against them, but really impressive from Hellebuck too. Uh,
Yes.
Above the great defensive effort, I think that Hellebuck still had to get called upon and make some really nice big saves. And shout out Nate Thompson, who has now 2 points in this series. He's outscoring Connor McDavid. I think he's the great equalizer. We found our big star center. So yeah.
where's Line
Daniel, what are
now?
your
I was
thoughts?
gonna say, yeah, we can bring Lenny back now that we have a center for him.
we have Nate Thompson set up for Patrick Line now apparently, so that's too bad. Um, I you know what? Obviously, this is not the result we expected, especially with the way the Jets played in that second period. They didn't really have a great second. They kind of turned it around the second half of the second period. They kind of evened out the shots for that period anyway. They started off that period outshot 7-1. And I think that the second period ended out, they were only outshot 16-8 or something. So they pretty much evened it out. And then going into the third, we kind of knew anyone that's watched any hockey in general, not even just playoffs, but that 2-1 goal for whichever team was definitely going to get a very good chance at that was going to be the game winning goal. And of course, coming from a Logan Stanley shot, which I had mentioned in the first intermission, that he woke up this morning and chose shots, and it worked as it tipped off Dominic Tontinato's stick and off the back bar, and they actually played for about 30 seconds after before we even knew it was a goal. I called it as soon as I saw it. I knew it was in, just the way it bounced off. But and then they had 2 empty net goals, like we mentioned, were pretty exciting as well from the usual suspects, and also shutting down the McDavid and Draisaitl is very impressive. I had mentioned that with 6 minutes left, I mentioned their ice time, and they each played about 3 minutes after that, and it was all after that last commercial break in the third period, and they just shut them down the whole game, but especially at the end when they were paired together, which obviously is going to happen quite a bit throughout this series.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm here to apologize, I think, on behalf of this podcast, because who were we on early in this season? The Nate Thompson signing. We came around on Nate Thompson, to be fair, but we were all over that signing. We're like, oh, another vet in the room. Dominic Toninato, I don't think got mentioned once this year in all the podcasts that we recorded.
We
were rough on Logan Stanley at points. I think a lot of us came around on Logan Stanley when he had that good run of play. And we've been hard on Maurice, I think, in an earned way. Tonight is a game that Maurice won. Totally Connor Hellebuck won this game, but this was a coaching win. And I am here to apologize to Paul Maurice for this one game. I don't know if I'm going to apologize for 8 years of subpar performances, but I will apologize for this one game because this was a masterclass. They played McDavid perfectly, like just perfectly. And Josh Morrissey, I thought, played his best defensive game in probably 3 years tonight. I thought he really, especially in the third, closed off a lot of people against the wall in a way that we haven't seen all year. We never see Josh Morrissey use the body like that. And I was just thoroughly impressed up and down the lineup how consistently they played. They were outplayed. Let's not get anything, twisted here. Edmonton deserved to win that game, except we have Connor Hellebuck and they have Mike Smith.
See, I think I almost want to argue with you on that one. I wanted to make a quick joke because Ryan, who made our awesome graphics, he might be listening right now. Shout out to Ryan for the great graphics.
Huge shout out to Ryan.
He texted us when that fourth goal went in. He's like, "Yeah, the JetsCentric fraudcast," and it's true. All the guys you've been ripping on all year have been going up. But I guess you build up for playoff hockey. What can we say? No, but where was I going with this? I think Edmonton should be disappointed with their game. I think this is more reflective of what Daniel and I specifically, but I think a lot of people feel the same way. You know how Daniel and I have said, we think either Oilers in 4 or 5 or Jets in 6 or 7, because if we can figure them out for one game, we can figure them out for the rest. This should be scary for Oilers fans because they know that their bottom 6 can't score. If Connor McDavid doesn't get on the score sheet, the rest of their team isn't getting on it either. I just think that the Oilers, they played fine. I think a lot of their defensemen had a good game. But if I'm an Oilers fan right now, I'm a little bit stressed out about the fact that our key is something that is slowly but surely and possibly getting figured out by the Jets and how to defend that. And that's a little bit, that would be scary for me as an Oilers fan, I think. So I don't think the Jets deserve to win this game necessarily, but I don't really think the Oilers deserve to win it either, if that makes sense.
Yeah, someone had to win pretty much is what you're saying. And the Jets did come out on top. And I mean, the Oilers did have their chances, and Hellebuck definitely came up huge. And this is definitely a Hellebuck win for sure. Obviously, they scored the two goals that they needed to win, but they basically won 2-1 with 2 empty netters, right? So, but at the end there, Hellebuck had that flurry, about 5 saves in a row, and of clear shooting lanes and all that were definitely top end or top to middle end chances that they had. So you kind of look at that and you say that's the Hellebuck that we have grown to know, and that as he's played like that pretty much every game that this season. Pretty much he led the league in games played at 46 or something like that out of 56, which I also predicted to start the year. I think I said he played 52 or something, but 46 is pretty close. And that's what we expect from Hellebuck. And I mean, he did come up big when he had to, and he made the saves when they were getting outplayed badly in the second, and as well at the end of the third when Edmonton was obviously all out in the offensive zone.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, Justin, what did you see in terms of the play? Like, you're definitely one of the people on the podcast that tends to look at some of the advanced stats and like the zone possession, the high danger chances. This isn't as lopsided as we've seen from Winnipeg this year, but it also still wasn't good from them.
No, definitely not. But I mean, when you look at it in terms of a game plan, and right, the Jets got to shut down Connor McDavid, and I think specifically off the rush chances, honestly, off the top of my head, I can't remember more than like 1, 2, 3 times maybe where he had like a clear like, he's winding up, he's coming in, and he's gonna walk Poolman or Forbert or Morrissey, whoever it is, right? So I think the Jets did a great job at limiting the chances off the rush, and I kind of noticed they kind of dropped a forward back. They didn't want to have all three kind of deep in the offensive zone. They kind of wanted to have that back pressure, and I think that had a big impact on the game. I mean, I agree with what you were saying, Liz, earlier too. Like, the Oilers should really be disappointed with how they played that game. They didn't create any room for McDavid, and really, like, there was no intensity for a playoff game, and a home playoff game at that. I mean, there was a couple of scrums, I think, at the end of the first period there. But besides from that, you would just think this is just another regular season game in the middle of February, right? Like, it lacked that kind of intensity. And the Jets did a good job, I think, at lulling the Oilers to sleep. Now, with that being said, the Oilers still did control the play and create more. But the Jets did a really good job at keeping that a very low event game. And that was nice to see for sure.
Yeah, according to Natural Stat Trick, Edmonton had 13 high danger chances to 8 for Winnipeg, and the expected goals were 2.5 for Edmonton to 1.3 for Winnipeg. I'll take that because I think our goalie is 1 goal better than their goalie. Thing is,
for
our
sure,
goalie
yeah.
isn't 3 goals better than their goalie. So
Yeah.
like we have to keep it that close in order for us to come out on top. So I totally agree, Justin. Even though they carried the play, it wasn't like Edmonton dominated by any stretch of the imagination. I will say I was a little more impressed with their bottom 6 than I thought I would be in terms of, I thought we were going to steamroll their bottom 6, and they held up fine. Now, the thing is, if PLD and Ehlers come back,
right,
we will steamroll their bottom 6 because
and that's,
their bottom 6 was not good.
Yeah,
and that's the thing you mentioned. Oh, go ahead, Liz.
I was just saying, I thought their top 6 was going to steamroll our top 6, and then they didn't. So I feel like it kind of went both ways in that game. Like, our teams almost evened out. Like, our I don't even know, but I had to pull up this conversation with myself and Brian Johnson. I sent this to him on April 4th, and I want to talk about this. So I texted him and I said, I have a theory. I said, methinks Paul loves Josh with all his heart and will always make him first pairing. I think he knows DeMello is good because he would be insane not to. I think he wants to protect Poolman and Stanley as much as he can while he still can, so that he can learn to trust them, and then come playoffs, he'll roll 44-2 for like 25 minutes a night. It's a reach, but it's my theory. Just wanted to bring that up, guys, because I knew that they were going to realize how good Dylan DeVello was, and I knew they were going to start playing that guy more, and I thought he had a decent game. I talked about this in the intermissions. Maybe not everyone was there. I'm not going to talk about it again too much, but I thought there were some great moments. Other than that goal, he had a couple of blips, but I thought he had some great moments of just very solid, calm defensive play that you really need for someone like Josh Morrissey, and you really need on a top pairing in the playoffs. So the Dylan DeMello fan account continues to ride, but I just had to bring that up.
And to be fair, they only played 22 minutes tonight, so
right.
You're a little off.
Too bad.
And I want to go back to that the bottom 6, top 6 from both teams, and we kind of touched on it a little bit with PLD and Ehlers coming back, hopefully for game 2 or game 3 or whatever. It kind of something I noticed that the Oilers do, and I think a lot of other teams might do this that the Jets might not necessarily, is that on an icing call or whatever, they'll put like McDavid and Draisaitl out almost automatically after, and they don't play together regularly. Like, they're not like the starting line for the game usually. Like tonight they weren't. So that's something that you look for. So our our top line of Scheifele, Wheeler, and Connor was tied to the McDavid line tonight, and whether that's matchup or choice driven by Tippett, the coach of Edmonton. I'm not really sure where I'm going with this, but I think adding like Ehlers and PLD definitely will help turn it into more of a top 9 bottom fourth line game, hopefully, especially if that Lowry line can really get going and stuff like that. And obviously, as we mentioned before, I think probably in both preview shows and in our last our test run of the post game, is that our bottom 6, you could probably name more players than Edmonton's bottom 6 going into this series and stuff like that. So I think that's going to make a big difference once Ehlers and PLD hopefully come back, hopefully for the next game. But if they're already skating in non-contact, they should be ready to go on Sunday for game 3 at the latest, I would assume.
That is not true at all. I can name Zach Cassian.
After watching the game.
The Zach Cassian types that are out there.
One thing though, like that, it's almost a good problem to have, but part of me almost wants only one of them to come back just for the time being. Because when they both come back, that's going to be a reunion of the Cop Lowry Appleton line, which I'm not super high on, and I love Perreault with that line, but you cannot put any of those 2 guys who were injured or Andrew Kopp on the 4th line. Like, you just cannot do that. The only one of those guys you can put on the 4th line is Matthew Perreault, because Matthew Perreault is the only player on this entire roster that can play any of the 4 lines that we have. So he's going to be the one that gets the demotion, and I don't want to see that happen. But it's coming because we're getting either the star power of Ehlers or the manpower of Dubois back. So, like, there are worse problems to have. But I liked what I've seen for Vesalainen. I like top 6 Cop, and Paul Stastny can do no wrong. So I was happy with that line. And I think I'll be happy with them when those 2 guys come back, but I think they fared well without them tonight, and that's very encouraging.
Yeah, and I want to go back. Actually, I remember the point is that, like, Scheifele, the Scheifele line, whoever will say it's him, Wheeler, and Connor, they'll never get a look against like Edmonton's bottom 6 if they're always matched up against them. But we're getting PLD and Ehlers back. That doesn't mean that they'll necessarily always be matched up against them throughout the entire game, which then creates opportunities either for the Scheifele line against the bottom 6 or for whatever line Ehlers is on or PLD is on as well, right? And that creates that steamroll that we were talking about that is definitely possible.
Yeah, AJ in the chat makes a good point. Laine was really invisible tonight. It was a good point.
Damn it.
And a good friend of mine tonight saw PLD out at Home Depot there grabbing some lumber for his some kind of contracting. I don't know if that's
an
true.
investment with where
Side
lumber prices are.
That's all $8 for a 2x4 now. That's crazy.
Let's look ahead to game 2. What are you looking for? Liz already touched on. Do you want to see Ehlers and PLD come back? What would you change, if anything, for the Jets?
Oh, am I starting? Oh man, I got to think about this. I think the answer is always a little bit more defensive activation. This is the first time I think I've said this all year. I liked the defense's defensive game tonight. I thought they had a pretty good kind of, like, I wasn't upset with them, and usually I am. So I'm cool with that. Yeah, I think I'd love to see, actually, I don't even know. I don't want to say that because I don't like rushing guys back from injury, and I feel like if they come back next game, it's going to be a rush. I would love to see them come back, and I'd love to see that happen in a way that Matthew Perreault can stay playing with good players. What's unfortunate is that no matter what, he's going to draw back with Thompson and Lewis, which means that Tononato's going to slip out for sure, no question. And I thought he's had a pretty good couple games, which is unfair of me to say, like, because I always talk about how much I hate small sample sizes, and this has been a small sample size, but I'm being nice, so we'll leave it at that. But that is going to add a scoring touch to all 4 lines, which might be really big against this team if McDavid starts being McDavid, which you know he will. Just it's a matter of time. So I'd love to see next game scoring from all 4 lines, or at least strong scoring chances, because you can't expect a goal from all 4 lines in a game. But that's what I'm hoping for next game.
Justin, anything as you look forward to game 2?
I think for me, I'm kind of looking for more of the same, right? I mean, you got possibly the world's best goaltender in net. So just try and keep it simple, keep it to the outside, and he should be able to have those point shots and try and limit off the rush, try and, stay back and play safe. I don't think you want to get into cheating for too much offense, too much defensive activation, unless they get Ehlers and PLD back. And I think that adds a whole nother sort of dynamic element to our top six. And then it might free up some matchups where you can get one of them, like Daniel was saying, against the bottom six of the Oilers, and maybe they'll have a field day. One thing I wanted to, or I guess a couple things too, about game one. I thought, I don't know about you guys, but I didn't really love Derek Forbert's game. I thought he was a little sloppy and kind of a little slow. And I don't think he won't come out of the lineup, but I'm not sure that he should, especially with the sort of game plan that the Jets are going for. He's a penalty killer and he plays a simple game, block shots, whatever. But I thought that he was bad, and I hope that he can have a bounce back game, because they really need to have that second pair behind Morrissey DeMello, who I thought did a darn good job against McDavid, about as good a job as you could ask them to. So we'll see what happens with Forbert there. And one more thing, I wanted to shout out Scheifele and Wheeler. I thought that they had a pretty darn good game. I know they tend to get a lot of bad mouth on the podcast, and rightfully so. I think that they kind of haven't been at the level they used to be. So it's to be expected. But I thought they had a really nice game today. I thought Wheeler had some sort of pep in his step. He was moving. And they had a really, really tough matchup with McDavid on the road. And they did a good job at limiting him and play a pretty boring game, which I wasn't sure that line would commit to, right? I mean, they're kind of an offensive line. So to get them to kind of buy in to that boring sort of sleepy game was good, and I think credit to Maurice there too. So I don't know if I'm turning full positive here or what, but I don't know. It's playoffs,
important to mention those things.
It's the playoffs.
We didn't win entirely by luck, right? Like there were a lot of small things that helped this win, and yeah, like you said, the defensive pairing did a massive job of being steady and being solid, and then our top line didn't suck in their own end, which is also huge. So
Daniel, thoughts going into game two?
Yeah, so basically the one thing that I kind of noticed, and I mean it's something probably minute and you probably can't control, but there's a few times, like I mentioned, the icings and stuff, McDavid coming out with Draisaitl. Both those times they were against the Thompson line and Stanley and Poolman, which is obviously the least ideal matchup for the Jets. And they did weather whatever. Yeah. And that happened a few times by either by icing or by just the way the lines were rolling out. And that's some coaching on the Edmonton side as well to kind of double shift or whatever. So that's something, I mean, there's not only so much you can do about that, but that's something that, make a smarter play. Like that Poolman play in the first period. I don't know. I'm going to dream about that more than the win tonight, maybe. But but other than that, I mean, he did score, so whatever. But other than that, I guess it's going to take this low event kind of hockey for the Jets to win this series, which is true, and that's to no one's real surprise. And of course, getting Ehlers and Dubois back into game two would be a big boost to the Jets right now, especially they'll be riding a high into Friday, which does kind of mean something. And it's also like Friday will be like the 11th time we've seen the Oilers this year or something crazy like that, which already like in game two of the first round. So you kind of, they know each other pretty well. So you should be able to make those adjustments. And that's something that the Jets always struggle with is making adjustments period to period or throughout the game. I mean, I would say hopefully they figure it out, but obviously they're not going to. So they just got to win with their pre-game game plan, which is clearly trying to play that little bit of physical game, getting that cycle going. They had a few good cycle shifts as well in the third period. So we'll see how that translates into the next game. There was only one penalty tonight, I believe. So special teams didn't really play too much of a factor. The Jets killed that one off pretty well. So obviously next game, there could be 4 penalties a team. You never know what's going to happen game to game, but I think that's still something we have to look for is the special teams, and having Ehlers and PLD back would definitely help the Jets overall, and especially if it comes to the power play.
I think Ehlers and PLD, what's nice about that too is that if they come out next game with a bit of a fire lit beneath their asses kind of thing, and we have to fight fire with fire, then at least we can. Like if you could sort of spread the wealth down those four lines, if they just keep scoring and all you can do is start scoring too, kind of thing, like at least then you can. Like I really don't feel like some of our current lines are, set up, and like the top line is pretty much that's all they can do is score goals. Like I think if Edmonton comes out and they have to score goals, like you leave it to the defense to kind of, you know, defend them. And I think you really have to start scoring yourself. I think that's one of the best ways to beat them, especially if you get behind early. Well, best way, obviously, otherwise you're not going to be able to catch up. But I think that'll be important. I think bringing back two guys that can have a massive offensive impact like those two can would be really big for that. And even
And
if they don't start scoring a lot themselves, then shut them down nice and quick. And yeah, put out Dubois and Stastny and whoever or something against like Alex Chason and James Neal and just crush them like a bug,
Yeah, and especially I noticed Smith, he looked kind of after that second goal. It's the kind of goalie he is. I know we have talked about in the first intermission, but he looked kind of rattled after that. The Jets had a couple of chances where he just didn't look the way he maybe has been this season or the second half of the season whenever he started playing elite. So that kind of thing, and hopefully like that, once you beat him once or twice, I think it kind of affects him more than maybe it does Connor Hellebuck, who's obviously like, he's just a different breed, Hellebuck, compared to Smith, I think. And that, as we had mentioned before, that's going to make a huge difference in the series.
Mike Smith is the kind of goalie that needs to see the puck for him to be good. He's not like a Ed Belfour type that can stop 16 and win a game. He needs to stop a lot more shots than that for him to be successful.
Yeah.
Look, the two biggest stats for me coming out of tonight is one penalty. And I think there's going to be a lot of complaining in Edmonton media the next 2 days about only getting one penalty call. Even though there weren't a bunch of egregious things, I think they're going to complain. How can Connor McDavid not get more than one penalty, power play out of this game?
Yeah.
And the other
Kyler
is they had
Yamamoto was the one who
68
drew
hits
it,
tonight.
too.
Now, usually, like, that's a stat I usually don't care about at all, but it was noticeable in how they were using those hits on McDavid and Draisaitl, pinning them against the boards quite often. If they can keep that up, and that's hard to do over a 7-game series, they can be successful. So those are the things I'm looking for.
But
To
on
me,
the contrary,
I usually am the one where it's like, oh, this was a gift win. Ehlers, PLD, you should take the next night off. Like, take the extra few days. I think the Jets should go for it because Edmonton feels fragile to me. Like, McDavid looked frustrated coming off the ice tonight. I think if they put it to them next game, Edmonton is liable to collapse.
Yeah, and what you said there about the hits kind of thing, like it almost goes hand in hand with the whole size thing. Like hits on their own are not a stat. It's useless. But if you can see the context of the hits and how it actually helps with the game, like they're good, and that's why they're in the game, right? And I think what you said about how it's going to be tough to keep laying the body on those guys. You know what? It's actually going to be really tough on those guys too to continue to have the body laid on them. So I think that's going to bode really well for us if we can keep it up, especially if we can spread the wealth with the hits. Like they said, when we had 18 hits, they had come from like 15 players or whatever. Like if all of these guys are able to, kind of be a little bit more aggressive in that sense, like it might tear this slightly, maybe not unmotivated. That's not the right word, but maybe a team that's a little on their heels now.
Dejected kind of.
Yeah. It might end up being one of those intangible factors that helps the Jets continue with the momentum into next game.
Look, we're only another 4-1 game from seeing Koskinen in net. That's how fragile I think they are.
I agree.
So that's what I'm hoping for. But for now, I'm going to celebrate. Holy
Absolutely.
cow, I was not expecting this game out of this team. Well-earned win. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in to everything tonight. The intermission chats, the post-game chat. We're going to be doing this throughout the playoff run, which is now at least 5 games long. We can now confirm that.
I got to open up my next Wednesday now. I already had something planned.
But we'll be back Friday night. We'll be doing intermission chats on Twitter Spaces. We'll be back here on YouTube for a post-game chat. Any final thoughts, anyone?
Yeah, just pumped to see where this team goes and what's going to happen when you bring back two of your most impactful offensive players.
I mean, they're just showing the highlights here. I got the Colorado game, and you just watch like the goal. They just show the Pullman goal and the way that it went. Like that's the kind of goal they're gonna have to score off the rebound or the Toninato tip. That's the kind of goals you're gonna score. And they were even saying that when the Jets were on their 1-8 or whatever it was to end the season. Oh, I think my video just cut out there for a second, but this is the kind of game, like I mentioned, they're going to have to play. And like I had said, if it goes 6 or 7, I think the Jets are the one that's coming out on top.
Yeah. For me, I guess just, really excited to see them win. I certainly, when it was confirmed Dubois Neithers was out, I had like little to no expectations that they'd be able to pull it off tonight and just keep riding the high. I mean, at the end of the day, you've already done your job. You won one game on the road, and if you can make it 2, go for broke, kind of, you don't have anything to lose. You already did your job winning game 1 on the road. If you can come home to Winnipeg up 2-0, you really got the Oilers on the ropes. So go Jets, go, and hopefully they can pull it out.
Yeah, and massive shout out.
All we need is the Stanley goal. We Dominic robbed us of the Stanley goal, even though it was beautiful. That's the only thing we're missing.
No, yeah, I was gonna say congratulations to our big point getters tonight: Nate Thompson, Tucker Pullman, Dominic Toninato, and Logan Stanley. Way to go,
big
guys.
Names. Yep.
We don't care about empty net points, so.
Combined cap hit of like 1 or 2.2 million, probably, if you looked up those guys. But
GM of the year, Kevin Cheveldayoff.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you Friday night. Go Jets, Joe. All right, we're clear.
Perfect.